We're now learning chapter 16. We're on page Chaf Beis. We're on the fifth line after the dot. But just to bring you up to date, some of you weren't here yesterday. I'm glad to see. Hi Moshe, hi Velvel, Hillel. So whoever's not on mute, please mute yourself. Need quiet. Thank you. So what's the kesher between what we're learning, which is how does an individual who wants to become better and be more in control over their bad habits or even good habits, but it's a habit, it's natural, right? There are people who go to sleep every day at a certain time, and they get up at a certain time, and they eat the same food for 50 years of their life. Okay? It's very, very beautiful. It's regulated and organized. But you know what? It's natural. It's become natural. Even if they weren't born with that style and that habit and that behavior, it became that way. So the Baal Tanya here, in chapter 15 and now in chapter 16, teaches us you have to break your habit. And if you're not breaking your habit, he calls it teva. If you're not breaking your teva, you're not an oved elikim. You still could be a good Beinani. And believe me, that's a big level. It's a great accomplishment. But you're not a servant of God. A servant means you're serving now. Each time you sit down to eat, even though it's at the same time that you ate yesterday, and it's the same food you ate yesterday, you still feel the struggle to eat more for Hashem, we call Hashem Shemayim, or more for Taiva, for pleasure. Every time. And Alter Rebbe says, if you don't feel that, and to feel that, he discussed in 15, you need to meditate and reflect using your moach, your cup, your head, which leads to a feeling in the heart, which acknowledges, the issues that we have, and then you're a live wire. So then you grapple, you struggle, you win, you lose. And this we see throughout the Tanya, and that's why it's such a wonderful sefer to learn and to live with. Not just to learn, but to really live with. The importance of struggle, the importance of a challenge. And we know we're a little older than the new generation, and God bless them because we need a new generation. But the idea, everything today is so easy. It's so much easier, When we were in school, we wrote. We took notes, right? Today, who's taking notes? Far-fetched, taking notes. We live on the phone and on the computer, and the phone in particular, and it's a bracha. It really is. I can tell you from my work, and probably you could tell me from your work, that it's mamash a bracha, how much more we're able to accomplish because of the advancement in technology. It really is a bracha. But when does it become not a bracha? If you don't know how to pick up a piece of a Gemara, and learn it without art scroll. Hebrew art scroll, English art scroll. When I was growing up, I didn't learn Gemara with an art scroll. And therefore, to understand the piece of Gemara, especially be able to understand the Tosfos and the Rashi and the Mashal and I had to, as we say in Yiddish, brechen the cup, which in English means to break your head. But you had to really. It was. And I remember in yeshiva, the question whether you're ready to go into Beis Medrash was, can you make what's called in the yeshiva world aleinin? Aleinin. Aleinin means, are you able to read and understand the Gemara without anyone helping you, without any sefer helping you? Can you figure it out? And that was the test. That was the first. There were more tests on yourself to know whether you really know the Gemara. But today, is it a problem to make a leinen? Before you go into your test tomorrow, the night before, you take out the art scroll, you take out the Steinsaltz, you take out whatever, and you have it all in front of you. The Kahati Mishnayos is like spoon-fed. The Tanya, which the Tanya was for so many years in a way closed. You have Chassidus Muveres, which you have some of you have been learning. You have the Chayenu. You have Miller's Tanya and Steinsaltz's Tanya. Okay, there's a nuance here, a nuance there. So on one hand, it's gewaldig. On the other hand, it becomes natural. Now, the Rebbe says, a Beinani that's an Oved Elokim, there are various kinds of Beinanis, is someone that doesn't take the status quo and he doesn't accept it. It's nothing. And you've met Lubavitcher Chassidim, and some of you have met older Lubavitcher Chassidim from a previous generation, because you guys, some of you have your white beards or half white beards, and that was the barometer, and that's why for these Chassidim, I think Yoni mentioned, you told the Rebbe, I did this, I did that, and the Rebbe said, that's all you did? Now, what, the Rebbe was not a nice man? He wanted to shtech you. You're telling him you put on tefillin with 100 people. Or you brought together 2,000 people to hear the Kriyas HaTorah and he says only 2,000. There are 10,000 children in Geula. And you're telling me you brought together 2,000. What should I give you, an ice cream or a lollipop? Right? It's like, now, what, the Rebbe didn't have the menschlichkeit to acknowledge you and say, oh, you're great. And the answer is, that's against the Beinani who's an Oved Elokim. The Beinani Oved Elokim is not satisfied. Because if he got 2,000 kids last year, if he only gets 2,000 kids this year, he's done, in a way, for him, nothing. It becomes routine. And this is a message that comes from the Tanya. We learned it chapter 15. So now in 16, the Alter Rebbe says, I don't want you to feel despondent and depressed. Because at times, you don't develop this palpable love feeling for God, where when you put on your tefillin in the morning in Eish Kodesh, as you make your loops, you're in love with Hashem. You're like thirsty for God. You don't. You rolled out of bed. You made it barely to the minyan, thank God. And you put on your tefillin and you put them up, and then you take your siddur. You daven. I got to run to work. I got to run to the kids. I got to run here. And it's true. Someone has to take the kids to cheder. But the question is, what's the quality of your davening? So the Alter Rebbe says in this chapter, I'll tell you what, I have a solution. You meditate and reflect on God's greatness to the point where you know that the right thing to do is A, B, and C. And if you can accomplish that, and you can if you take a few minutes of meditation or reflection, I will consider it as though you have a burning love for me in your heart. And that's a chiddush. That's unusual. We don't find such a thought anywhere in the Torah except for the Gemara that is going to quote in what we're going to learn today in Kiddushin, that Hashem is mitzaref. Hashem combines your thought to your action. But that's a chiddush. Now, I just want to, we skipped the Haggadah on page, the footnote here, kind of, on page 42. And I want to learn it inside. The Alter Rebbe says that he says that at times a person isn't able to develop this palpable love in the heart. So at that time, he's working on what in computer terminology, he's working on, what is it called when the computer shuts down and you still have the screen? What is it called?
Restart?
No. What? A certain mode. It's called a certain mode. I forget now. In other words,
Standby.
no,
Standby.
no, not standby. There's another word.
Safety mode.
Safety mode. Thank you.
No, Rob?
Thank you. Safety mode. Right? So now, Moshe, they're serving Hashem in safety mode. What does it mean? It's safe. In other words, you still can operate here, but it's not the schmaltz. It's not the kishkis. It's not animated. It's, it's my little safe place where I go back to, where I know no one's going to bother me and no one's going to touch me. And over there, I'll be able to do my basics. Says the Alter Rebbe.
Not taking chances.
Right. Says the Alter Rebbe that when a person isn't able to generate and motivate himself to have this palpable love for Hashem, the safety mode, which he calls Ava Musuteres, the latent inherent love, is adequate. Now the question is why? So look in the Haggadah, look in the footnote on page 42. It says Haggadah. It's on the left side of the page, like it's on the right page, but the left-hand column. Vasiba, in parentheses. Vasiba lezeh. The reason is, it's because his intellect, v'naran shaloi, and his nefesh ruach neshama, his midos, his emotions, they come mibchinas ibur v'helem. They come from a level that Kabbalah calls impregnation and concealment. I'll finish it and then I'll explain. Teichat tvuna, within the mind. V'loi mibchinas leidus v'izgalus, and they don't come from birth and revelation, ki yidu li'odechein, as this a concept is known to those that study the esoteric wisdom, i.e. Kabbalah. Basically, in a nutshell, what's the difference between a child, while the child is in the mother's womb, and the child comes out his galus, child is born? The difference is whether the fetus is still part of the mother, eats what the mother eats, and thinks what the mother thinks, and experiences, right? Or when the fetus is born, i.e. the baby is born, there's independence. So one we call Ibor, the state called Ibor, impregnation, and one we call Leda, birth. Says the Alter Rebbe, you know why one person is able to generate this passionate love for God and one person isn't? It has to do with your soul, with your neshama. Depending where your soul comes from, Isser, if it comes from Ibor or it comes from Leda, it will be easier or harder for you to generate the Ava for Hashem, his galus libai, or you'll only be able to access the safety mode. And that's also very comforting. Because that Moshe is telling us it's not our fault. It's not that I'm lazy. I'm not lazy. I'll just give you a personal example. I've been learning Chassidus all my life. And I remember in yeshiva, and I had some chavrusis who their mind, their understanding of these ideas was so deep, much deeper than I. And I was wondering, but I learned more hours. I was much more of a diligent student, right? But nevertheless, their grasp of the concept was a lot deeper. Now, so you feel bad? The answer is, it's not because I wasn't trying. Believe me, I was trying much more than them. But the way Hashem created my mind, he didn't give me the ability to go to understand it deeper, much deeper. The way he created their mind is he gave them that ability. Now, we don't know that, so you have to try. And I did try, right? Here, the Alter Rebbe is talking about the same idea, but on a much higher level. Where was your soul? Where does your soul, your neshama, come from? Ibor, impregnation, the level of impregnation, or later the level of revelation of birth? And this answers another issue that's important. Moshe always loves to hear something practical. Husband and wife, spouses. Why is it that, you go out before you're married, you meet, you talk, you find compatibility and all that. And then as you marry and life goes on, you have children, you have a whole family and everything else. You see that certain things talk more to you, certain things talk more to your wife. What's going on over here? Is that an intellectual thing? So when you learn Kabbalah and Chassidus, you come to understand, no, it's much deeper than that. It has to do with the soul, the type of soul you have, the type of neshama you have. And that's why it is important to learn even these inyan and these topics, because although like someone told me, and I think I told you that, I once gave a lecture in Miami about first and second marriages according to the Arizal, and someone walked out on me. I see someone young, and he walks out, and it was noticeable that he walked out. So after Mincha, I said, did I say something that offended you? He says, yes. I said, what did I say? He says, the topic itself offended me. I just got married last week, and you're talking about second marriages. Now, yeah. Now, it was water off my back because, hey, guy, what can I tell you? I mean, I was discussing this idea, but at the same time, it points to, in other words, I didn't want to shtech him, God forbid. But he was very super sensitive. He just got married. You telling me sometimes your second marriage is really your zivuk, not your first marriage. That's what it says in the Arizal, whether we like it or not. That's what it says. Now, does that mean to say we should go now search a second zivuk? You're out of your mind. You're a sinner. If there's a divorce and if that's the situation, and you marry a second time, and your second marriage is better than your first, then you could point to this Arizal and say, well, this Arizal would support my second marriage. Why it's better than my first? But that's not a reason to go and say, hey, honey, I'm ending my first marriage with you. I'm going to choose someone else. Because we know most people who do that are just gluttons and balitaiva and have lust and all that. Okay? I shouldn't say most. I take back that word. Not most. But there are such. Because there are people who end up in the divorce, in a legitimate divorce, and there's legitimate divorce. I don't want to go into it now. It's a different topic. But the point is, it has to do with neshama. 2 children. You have children. Same mother, same father. One is smart in this, and one is weak in this. One likes this. One is envious of this. What's going on here? Says the Arizal. It has to do with the sibling rivalry because you both come from the same the same tree of life, and you're both sucking nourishment from the same source, and each one wants more nourishment. These concepts are real, and these concepts give us a better understanding of how we function and what's going on. So too, I'm using that as examples. So too, what it says here in Tanya is the same nekuda, the same point. That a neshama, that it comes from ibur, impregnation level, always feels the mother, always feels the inspiration of the mother. That soul is 75 years old and feels the mother's impact on him 75 years later. And I don't mean only consciously, what lessons my mother taught me. I don't mean that. I mean, spiritually, there is a connection that this soul is kind of dependent on its source. And in this case, when it comes to love for Hashem, when the midos, Isser, when a person's emotions feel the moach, the meditation, which understands God, then those midos are on fire. Because the midos are it's like when you put a frying pan on a fire, and you cook your eggs, or you cook your potatoes, and then you shut it, and you take it off after a while, it cools down. But imagine, after a while, it's still as hot, as though the fire goes along with the pan, even when you're taking out the eggs and the potatoes and you're eating them. That's the same idea of these midos. These midos are on fire because the moach is fueling them even as they are midos. That's the Ibur experience. Whereas the Leda experience, following the words of the Alter Rebbe and the Haggadah here, the birth experience is, on one hand, it's independent, Moshe, right? Hey, I'm a big boy. I was born. I'm independent. And absolutely. But at the same time, you're on your own now. And therefore, what your mother gave you, she gave it to you in utero, right? When you were a fetus. Now you're born. If you don't make it work, it ain't going to happen. So that type of a neshama, which we call Leda, doesn't have the moach fire to fuel it every moment. And therefore, that type of neshama cannot experience the Ava b'hisgalus, and therefore relies on the safety mode. I've given you numerous examples. I hope one of them will resonate with each of you. Yes, Moshe, you're on.
Okay, so I just want to go back for a second. The idea of a sibling, you could have a sibling that can be very close in age, ages, and they are so different. They're so different, and it could be as if they would meet each other in the street, as if they didn't know each other, and they wouldn't have anything to do with each other. Yet they're brother and sister, or brother and brother, sister and sister. So my question, I just want to go back for a second. A siblings, I didn't quite catch this. Siblings come, the source of the neshama is the same?
Yes. The source, the tree. There's one tree. There are branches on a tree. So the siblings are two branches on the tree. So the tree is the same tree, but the branches are two different branches.
And you gonna make the recipe?
Okay.
Do you understand that, or you don't follow that?
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure how to follow it in the context of Ibur and Leda. I'm not.
Well,
or
what
Ibur and Leda on this completely different issue.
One, it's a different issue, but one branch somehow gets more nourishment from the tree and one gets less. Or let's say that they both get different kind of nourishment from the tree. And so one, the buds are larger and nicer, and one, the buds are smaller and maybe not nice, whatever. So too with siblings. And the Arizal adds to that. That's why sometimes we find sibling rivalry, because each is trying to nourish more from the tree. And they're jealous. And therefore it comes out where
Yaakov and Esav.
Yaakov and Esav. Yeah. Therefore it comes out that as you said, Moshe, they can be very different, and the Arizal's adding even more. They can be, in a way, jealous of each other. Each one wants to say, I am more of my father, of my mother, and listen, this is Maisen B'chol Yoim. And unfortunately, when after the parents pass on and they fight for the money and the estate, the ugliness comes out, But that's not what the Arizal talks means. That's called grubkeit, greed, etc.
Okay, so Rabbi Dalfin, then what would you say? What would you say the Arizal is speaking about then?
The Arizal speaking about, one sibling sees in his parents more the love aspect, and one sees in them more the gvura aspect, the discipline aspect, and one sees in them the more spiritual, and one sees in them the more material, things like that. So the way they act in life, they go back and say, and I see this in speaking sometimes with my own siblings. And Baruch Hashem, we don't have sibling rivalry, but still, I have one perception of my parents, how I grew up, and another one has another perception. Right? Again, but the Arizal that I was citing specifically is talking about rivalry, a sibling rivalry. That's very different than my understanding of my parents is this way, you understand them there. That's, that's tolerable. But when they're in a fight and they're jealous, that's a problem. So the Arizal says that it could be that the problem begins in the source, in the shirish, in where they come from. The comparison that I mentioned to what we're learning in this Haggadah, Moshe, was that just as the Arizal says this about two brothers or two sisters or brother and sister who are jealous of each other, and he says, hey, it's not, the cause isn't what you think the cause is. The cause is in their source. They're both nourishing from the tree of life, the tree, and they want more for themselves. They want more. They want to be more not moist. They want to be more moist. They want to grow better. They want to have nicer buds. They want to have nicer fruit, right? And one says to the other, this is all metaphorically speaking, one branch says to the other, hey, I want to be nicer than you. So I said that so in other words, what we're pointing to, what the Arizal lets us know and teaches us is that the issue here is a spiritual one, a neshama one. That the reason why there's sibling rivalry is not because who has more of the parents' money, and who, has more, no. That's just the outer manifestation. It's a soul issue going on. So I said, so too, the reason why some people are able to motivate themselves to have a revealed Ava for God, and some people cannot develop a real palpable love, but just this latent, inherent love, is what Dr. Rebbe says in the Haggadah, is because they have two different types of souls. They have two different kinds of neshamas. And I brought the example of my own experience in yeshiva, in the beginning I was morbid, why can't I understand the Maimer as well as my chaver? I have to spend hours in thought and in learning to, and this guy gets it right. And the answer is because God gave him a certain type of brain. He gave me a certain type of brain. So that's again also, that's not soul, that's brain. So take it back a step when you talk about what type of soul, that that gives you an answer why one person's able to develop a palpable love and why some are not able to develop that. That's what I said. Chevra, we learned the Haggadah, Baruch Hashem, and we dialogued. I like that, and it's important, and I want this to continue, so that yes, we have to cover ground, but it's fine. We need to understand. You see, I could have read the Haggadah without this and without Moshe and other Chevra's comments and wanting to understand better. And the purpose of the shir is to understand it. So everyone, have a great day. We'll see everyone in Mitzvah Hashem tomorrow, bright and early. Sei gesund. Bye.